They say a mother knows her child better than anyone else in the world. But what happens when the only way to truly see your daughter is to betray her trust completely? I've carried that question like a stone in my chest for months now. And no matter how many times I trace back through my choices, I can't decide which moment destroyed us more, the moment I broke that tiny lock, or the moment I read the words she never meant for my eyes. It started on a rainy Tuesday in March. Just another quiet afternoon in our perfect, suffocating house. The kind of silence that used to feel peaceful but had slowly become a third presence between us, cold and accusatory. Zainab's bedroom door was closed, as always. The sound of that door clicking shut had become the soundtrack of my failure as a mother. The house smelled like the lavender diffuser I kept running in the hallway. You know that clean, controlled scent that's supposed to calm you down? Yeah, that's what filled every room. But beneath it, there was something else. Something I'd been ignoring for months. The weight of words never spoken. The heaviness of a daughter who looked through me like I was glass. I stood in her doorway that afternoon, her diary sitting on the desk like a small black confession. She was out with friends, or at least, that's what she'd muttered as she brushed past me without making eye contact. The lock was cheap, decorative almost. The kind you could break with a hairpin if you were desperate enough. And God help me, I was desperate enough. I used to be good at this. The whole mother thing. I had the warm smile down, the encouraging words, the carefully packed lunches with little notes tucked inside. From the outside, we looked perfect. Successful career, beautiful home, a daughter who once lit up every room she entered. People at work would ask about Zainab and I'd glow with pride, rattling off her achievements like they were my own. But something shifted when she turned 16. Slowly, then all at once. The girl who used to curl up next to me on the couch became a ghost who drifted past me in hallways. Her phone became a shield, her bedroom door a border I wasn't allowed to cross. I told myself it was normal. Teenagers pull away. They test boundaries. This was just a phase, and phases end. Except this one didn't. My husband, David, barely noticed. He'd come home from work, ask how's Zainab, in that absent way people ask how are you, without expecting a real answer, then disappear into his study. The loneliness of our marriage had become so familiar I barely felt it anymore. But watching Zainab retreat from me? That was a fresh wound every single day. I started inventing reasons for her distance. Maybe she was struggling at school. Maybe there was a boy. Maybe, and this thought kept me awake at night, maybe she was in real trouble and I was too blind to see it. The fear grew teeth. What if she was hurting herself? What if she needed me and I was missing every sign? That fear became my justification for everything that came next. Her room still smelled like her. That coconut shampoo she loved, mixed with the faint vanilla of her body lotion. I stood in the doorway for a full minute before I crossed the threshold, like some invisible force field might stop me if I hesitated long enough. It didn't. The diary sat on her desk, half buried under textbooks and crumpled papers. Black leather, no bigger than my hand. The lock was a joke, really. One of those tiny brass things you could buy at any stationery store. I told myself I was protecting her. That I had no choice. That any good mother would do the same. My hands were shaking as I slid the hairpin from my pocket. I'd grabbed it from the bathroom counter on my way to her room, which meant some part of me had already decided. The lock popped open with barely any resistance, and the sound it made, that tiny metallic click, felt louder than my own heartbeat. I opened to the first page. My breath caught. Mom looked at my A- like it was a personal failure. I think she'd rather have a smart robot than a messy daughter. The words hit me like stones. Not drugs. Not self-harm. Not some secret boyfriend. Me. It was about me. I should have closed it right then. Should have locked it back up and walked away. But I didn't. Because somewhere beneath the shock and the guilt, there was something else. A sick, desperate need to know what my daughter really thought of me. So I kept reading. Page after page, entry after entry. Each one a mirror I didn't want to look into. She doesn't ask how I'm feeling. She asks how I'm performing. Every conversation is a progress report. Every smile has to be earned. Sometimes I think she's not even my mom. She's just a cold clock ticking down all the ways I'm not enough. A cold clock. That's what she called me. I wanted to argue with the pages, to defend myself against the ink. I only want what's best for you, I thought furiously. I sacrificed my 20s, my career ambitions, my entire identity to give you opportunities one never had. Everything I do is for you. But the diary didn't care about my sacrifices. It only recorded the cost. I tried to remember the last time Zainab had hugged me properly. Not the stiff, obligatory squeeze on her way out the door, but a real hug. The kind where she melted into me and I could feel her heartbeat against mine. It had been years. Maybe 3? 4? When did I stop being her comfort and become her judge? My hands trembled as I turned another page. The diary had become a stand-in for everything I'd lost. This small black book knew my daughter better than I did. It held her in ways I couldn't anymore. And every word on every page was proof that the distance between us wasn't her fault. It was mine. Then I found the entry from 2 weeks ago, and everything inside me went cold. Had another panic attack today. 3rd one this month. Couldn't breathe during chemistry. Had to lock myself in the bathroom until my hands stopped shaking. I keep thinking about university applications and I want to throw up. What if I pick the wrong school? What if I get in and can't handle it? What if I disappoint her again? I can't disappoint her again. Sometimes I think it would be easier to just disappear. The page blurred. My daughter wasn't angry. She wasn't rebellious. She was terrified. And I was the thing she was terrified of. All those times I'd pushed her to aim higher, do better, be more. I thought I was motivating her. Building her resilience. Preparing her for a competitive world. But what I'd actually built was a cage made of my own expectations, and she'd been suffocating inside it for years. The silence between us wasn't rebellion. It was survival. I sat on the edge of her bed, clutching the diary like it might anchor me to something real. The shame was a living thing, crawling under my skin. I wasn't just a flawed mother. I was the source of my daughter's pain. The villain in her story. And I'd been so blinded by my own narrative of sacrifice and love that I hadn't seen what I was doing to her. My hands were still shaking as I carefully placed the diary back on her desk. The lock was broken now, hanging useless. Would she notice? Would she know? I left her room and closed the door behind me, but the weight came with me. It settled into my chest, heavy and permanent. I'd crossed a line I could never uncross, and what I'd found on the other side was unbearable. But I couldn't tell her. Could I? I decided I could fix it. That's what I told myself the next morning when Zainab came down for breakfast. I could be better. Softer. I could undo the damage without ever admitting what I'd done. You look nice today, I said as she reached for the orange juice. My voice came out too bright, too eager. She froze mid-reach, her eyes flickering to mine with something close to alarm. What? Your hair. It looks nice. She touched it self-consciously, confused. It's the same as always. Well, it suits you. I smiled. The smile felt like a mask. She grabbed the juice and left without another word. I tried again at dinner. Asked about her day in that gentle, therapist tone I'd heard other mothers use. Offered to watch a movie together, her choice, complimented her for unloading the dishwasher without being asked. Each attempt made her pull further away, her shoulders tensing every time I opened my mouth. "What's wrong with you?" she finally asked, her fork suspended halfway to her mouth. "Nothing. You're being weird." Her eyes narrowed. "Did Dad say something?" "No, I just want to. I have homework." She stood abruptly, leaving her plate half full. I couldn't look at her. That was the problem. Every time I tried to make eye contact, I saw the words from her diary branded across my vision. Cold clock. Smart robot. Sometimes I think it would be easier to just disappear. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me wasn't a mother trying to reconnect. She was a manipulator. A stage manager arranging props and feeding lines, trying to produce a performance of family love without ever admitting the truth. I was making it worse. And I had no idea how to stop. 3 days later, I found myself in the living room at midnight, holding her diary again. I don't even remember going to her room to get it. But there it was in my hands, the broken lock catching the dim lamplight. I could destroy it. Burn it in the fireplace. Erase the evidence and go back to pretending I'd never violated her trust. She'd never have to know. My fingers traced the leather cover. The coward's way out had never looked so appealing. "What are you doing?" I looked up. Zainab stood in the doorway in her pajamas, her face pale in the darkness. Her eyes dropped to the diary in my hands, and I watched in real time as understanding crashed over her. Her expression didn't harden. It didn't flash with anger. It just collapsed. Like something inside her had finally broken beyond repair. That look, that devastating, hollow look, was worse than any scream could have been. "Zainab, wait." The words tumbled out before she could turn away. "Don't go. Please." She stood frozen, her hand gripping the doorframe. "I read it." My voice cracked. I broke the lock and I read every word. "I'm not here to justify myself. I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong." The silence stretched between us, sharp and fragile. The silence, I continued, my throat closing around each word. "It was my fault. All of it. You weren't pulling away. I pushed you." She still hadn't moved. Hadn't spoken. The diary felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my trembling hands. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't demand explanations or hurl accusations. The silence that filled the space between us was heavier than any words could have been. I waited for something. Anything. Anger I could have handled. Tears I could have tried to comfort. But this? This quiet, complete devastation was beyond my reach. Zainab's eyes moved from the diary to my face, then back to the diary. I could see her processing it. Not just the violation, but everything that came before it. Every forced compliment. Every gentle question. Every awkward attempt at connection over the past few days. It all made sense to her now. She took a slow breath, and for a moment I thought she might speak. But she didn't. She simply let go of the doorframe, turned, and walked away. Her footsteps on the stairs were measured, controlled. Not the thunder of anger but the careful tread of someone who'd already gone numb. She didn't look back. I sat there in the lamplight, still holding her diary. The power it had held over me, the terrible knowledge, the crushing guilt, had shifted completely. It wasn't my secret anymore. It was our truth, exposed and ugly in the open air. I looked down at the pages, still open to an entry I hadn't meant to read again. But this time I didn't read. I simply held it. This small black book that had shown me everything I'd refused to see. The house was silent again. But this silence was different. Honest. Unforgiving. And entirely my doing. The house looked different now. Every perfectly arranged throw pillow, every spotless countertop, every carefully curated family photo on the wall, it all felt like set dressing for a life that had never actually existed. The neatness wasn't comforting. It was suffocating. I moved through the room seeing them through Zainab's eyes. The kitchen where I'd criticized her for leaving crumbs. The dining table where every meal had become a performance review. The hallway where she'd learned to make herself smaller, quieter, less. The silence between us now wasn't a wall. It was an acknowledgement. She knew I knew. And we both had to live with that. I kept asking myself the same impossible question: is it possible to unread something? To unknow what you've learned? The diary had been a confession, but not just hers. It had forced me to confess too, to admit that the mother I thought I was had only ever existed in my own head. I wasn't the perfect mother anymore. That illusion had shattered the moment I broke that cheap brass lock. Now I was just a deeply flawed woman who'd hurt the person she loved most, desperately hoping for a second chance she might never get. The guilt didn't fade. It settled into my bones, became part of my daily rhythm. Wake up. Remember. Feel the shame. Keep going anyway. This was the price of finally seeing the truth. And I would pay it for the rest of my life. Because the alternative, going back to being blind, was no longer an option. 3 weeks later, Zainab came down for breakfast and sat across from me. Not beside me. Not close. But present. I'm still angry, she said quietly, staring at her cereal. I know. I don't know if I'll ever trust you the same way. I know that too. She finally looked up. Why did you tell me? You could have just put it back. Pretended it never happened. I met her eyes, forcing myself not to look away. Because pretending is what got us here in the first place. The conversation didn't fix anything. We didn't hug. We didn't cry together. She finished her breakfast and left for school, and I sat in the kitchen alone, exactly as I'd been before. Except everything was different now. The path forward wasn't clear. It wasn't short. But it existed. I'd learned something terrible about love, how easily it can become possessive. How blindness can masquerade as protection. How the tighter you hold on, the more damage you do. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't holding on at all. It's letting go of who you thought you needed to be and admitting you got it wrong. So I'm asking you, have you ever been so scared of failing as a parent that you did the one thing you knew would destroy trust? Tell me, was it worth the truth? If this story reached you, hit that like button. Subscribe for more raw, honest stories about the messy reality of family. Because perfection is a lie we all need to stop telling.